Frankenstein's monster is arguably the most iconic monster of them all, and has always been a favorite of Saturday morning cartoons, whether in the form of the actual monster from Mary Shelley's classic novel, or simply as a stock character representing a generic monster, friendly or otherwise. An iconic product of mad science, this creature has lumbered and lurched through scores of cartoons through the decades. And in celebration of Halloween this month, we are spotlighting the most memorable of these appearances as we revisit a diverse number of classic homages, tributes, and spoofs of Frankenstein's monster from 20th century Saturday morning cartoons. Mr. Magoo first encountered Frankenstein's monster in the 1959 Mr. Magoo episode entitled Mr. Magoo Meets Frankenstein. Magoo is looking for a hotel to stay in and mistakenly arrives at the castle of a variation of Dr. Frankenstein, who is in need of a human brain for his monstrous creation and happily plays along, pretending his castle is a hotel, to hilarious results. Magoo encountered the monster again in the 1965 episode of The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo, an animated series which featured the Magoo character as an actor in adaptations of literary classics. The 25-minute episode, Mr. Magoo's Dr. Frankenstein, gave us an overview of Mary Shelley's classic novel, with Magoo playing the role of Victor Frankenstein. It is rare to find an animated retelling of the original Frankenstein story. And although a little more somber than a traditional Mr. Magoo cartoon, this episode put aside the old man's traditional nearsightedness and stayed fairly true to the original material. The SuperFriends were forced to confront a terrifying rendition of the monster in the 1979 episode of the world's greatest SuperFriends, entitled The SuperFriends Meet Frankenstein. Batman and Robin travel to Transylvania to stop a descendant of the original Dr. Frankenstein from creating a new monster. Their efforts fail, and although Robin is able to escape, Batman is captured and his mental abilities are transformed to the new monster, as are the powers of both Superman and Wonder Woman, who are also captured in their efforts to rescue Batman. The monster is then unleashed on the continent of Europe, and Robin is tasked with stopping him. Batman's sidekick becomes the main hero in this episode as he temporarily receives the powers of the three other superheroes. But things become complicated when he learns that he has no choice but to use kryptonite to stop Dr. Frankenstein's new monster. The Transformers paid an interesting homage to the Frankenstein story in the second season's 1985 premiere episode Autobot Spike. After Spike is seriously injured during a vicious battle with the Decepticons, the Autobots use Sparkplug's new invention, Autobot X, as a body for Spike's mind until his human body can recover. The experiment works like a charm, and since Spike's mind is in Autobot X, he temporarily becomes Autobot Spike. Unfortunately, the entire procedure is too overwhelming for the young man, and also has a sinister side effect, causing the state of Spike's mind to become unstable, negatively affecting his entire perspective and leading him to make disastrous decisions. The entire episode is filled with references to the Frankenstein story, which makes sense as the episode was written by Don Glutt, who himself could be considered an expert on the Frankenstein monster, having written many novels, articles, short stories, and non-fiction books about Frankenstein and his monster. We were treated to a memorable Frankenstein spoof in the Phranken-runt segment of the Animaniacs, an episode called Phranken-runt. In this rendition, Dr. Frankenstein, spelled with a PH, is a female mad scientist whose appearance is modeled after the Bride of Frankenstein, as seen in the 1935 classic film of the same name. Dr. Frankenstein intends to destroy the village off the coast from her castle with her new creation, a monstrous dog named Scout. When Frankenstein finally gets Scout on his way to the village, his circuits get damaged by lightning before he has left the castle, which leads to Frankenstein in search of a dog brain. The solution comes shortly after as Rita and Runt appear on the doorsteps of Frankenstein's castle. We are treated to mad chases and lively musical numbers throughout the episode as the Mad Doctor desperately attempts to get her hands on Runt's brain. Coincidentally, that month of October 1993 saw another interesting spoof of the classic story in the Pink Panther reboot series episode Pink-Stein. The Pink Panther is hired to rid a town of mice, but the townspeople are hard to please and are constantly annoyed with his methods. To make matters worse, the Pink Panther is pestered by a love-struck neighborhood witch, and he ends up constructing a look-alike Frankenstein's monster to distract her. Unfortunately, his plan backfires, and the townspeople are more interested in running the Pink Panther out of town rather than his monster. Mickey Mouse has certainly seen some things in his time, but nothing could have prepared him or his fans for what he would go through in the 1995 short Runaway Brain. In an attempt to convince Minnie that he hasn't forgotten to buy her an anniversary present, Mickey Mouse ends up promising to take her to Hawaii. Funds being short, he answers a newspaper ad advertising a mindless day's work. The position turns out to be as a lab assistant to the sinister Dr. Phranken-runt, who happens to be searching for a donor to provide his monstrous creation with a brain. The result sees Mickey switching brains with the doctor's enormous monster, Julius. And to complicate matters, Julius becomes smitten with Minnie Mouse, who is unaware of any change. Runaway Brain was basically a remake of the classic 1933 Mickey Mouse short, The Mad Doctor. While the general plot of the cartoon paid tribute to the Frankenstein novel, other horror stories are referenced too, notably The Exorcist. And the short also featured the voice of Kelsey Grammer, playing the role of Dr. Phranken-runt. And last but not least, this list brings us to the end of the century as we take a break from Saturday morning cartoons with the full-length animated feature Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein. The Chipmunks are performing at a horror-themed amusement park where Dr. Frankenstein has inhabited a new attraction called Frankenstein's Castle, where he has set about building a new monster. The monster is brought to life, and the Doctor sends it in pursuit of the Chipmunks, who escape and are followed home and befriended by the monster, whom the Chipmunks name Frankie. Dr. Frankenstein tracks Frankie to the Chipmunks' home and kidnaps Alvin, forcing Simon, Theodore, and Frankie to hurry back to the park and rescue him. The movie was successful enough to generate a renewed interest in the Chipmunks, and was followed up a year later by a standalone sequel titled Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman. I hope you enjoyed these monstrous tributes to Frankenstein's monster. I left out enough details so as to not spoil any of these episodes for those of you who would like to watch them this Halloween. I've already covered Count Dracula's appearances in 20th century cartoons, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, make sure to share it with your cartoon and horror loving friends, and also let us know in the comments which other animated appearances of Frankenstein's monster you've enjoyed. I'll be back soon with more Halloween content for you, so until then, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more cartoon history.